They're alive.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Apologize for the late start. Welcome to Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. Today being January
30th.
It's early in the session too, right? 2025. Anyway, welcome everyone. We'll do introductions starting to my left.
Morning, Damian Leonard from Legislative Council.
Seth Longworth from Bennington Senate District.
Jenny Lyons, Chittenden Southeast District.
And Mark Higley, the Orleans Lamoille District, a representative.
Good morning, Dave Weeks, representing Rutland County.
Carol Odie, representing the far new north end of Burlington.
And Trevor Squirrel representing Underhill and Jericho. And
Emery Mathias, Committee Assistant.
okay, first item, actually, before we get started, I want to let everyone know that the original agenda had the general assistance housing rule up for discussion today. I've been in contact with the Department DCF and going back and forth about our concerns, both from an emergency rule and into the permanent rule. And they requested a few more weeks to work on response to some of our concerns. So I thought that would be a good thing to do. And so we'll be meeting on the 13th to discuss that. Okay, so that's not on the agenda today. Anyway, first up will be the minutes from January 16th, 2025. Do I have a motion? So moved by Carol Odie. Any discussion, questions, edits? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So first up, we have, I'm looking at two different. Okay, this will be Rule 24 P35, Agency of Human Services Licensing and Operating Regulations for Therapeutic Community. Stuart, Sure.
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 Yes.
Very good.
Good morning.
Sorry about that.
No
And
problem.
Pam Code is on here also, but I assume, Stuart, you're presenting?
I am. Ms. Coda is here as the subject matter expert in the event that there are any questions about licensing. I'll let
Okay.
Pam introduce herself, but for the record, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Stuart Scher. I'm General Counsel for the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living. And
And
Pam?
I'm Pam Coda, State Survey Agency Director with the Division of Licensing and Protection.
It's all yours.
Wonderful, thank you. So this is a fairly straightforward rule, and I say that because the legislature directed the agency and Dale in particular to amend its existing rules and provided us the exact language that we are required to incorporate into the existing rules. So let me just give you a little bit of background as to how we got here. So 33 VSA section 7117 authorizes the Secretary of Human Services to adopt reasonable rules for the operation of facilities that are licensed under that chapter. And that includes therapeutic community residents, also known as TCRs. In 2012, Action Resolve number 160 directed Dale to adopt rules amending the TCR licensing regulations by including specific requirements for the operation of what's known as a secure residential recovery facility. And then most recently in 2024, Act number 137, the Dale Commissioner was directed to file and adopt these proposed rule amendments that we're here on today to the existing secure residential recovery facility section of the therapeutic community residence rules. More specifically, that Act 137, directs the Dale Commissioner in consultation with the Commissioner of Mental Health to adopt rules authorizing the use of emergency involuntary procedures, including the administration of involuntary medication at a secure residential recovery facility. And that secure residential recovery facility is known as River Valley, which is operated by the Department of Mental Health. And those rules must be adopted in a manner that's identical to that required in rules adopted by the Department of Mental Health governing the use of emergency and voluntary procedures in psychiatric inpatient units. So these final proposed rules incorporate the provisions of the Department of Mental Health's regulation establishing standards for emergency and voluntary procedures, which was last adopted in 2016. And so by doing so, Dale has acted within its authority and in a manner consistent with the intent of the legislature. As I mentioned earlier, Dale was without discretion to decide whether to adopt this amendment, which is narrowly tailored to address the requirements of Act 137. As such, the rule is not arbitrary. A virtual public hearing was held on October 15th of 2024. Unfortunately, no member of the public attended this hearing and no written comments were received during the public comment period. Now, Dale did make one change to the proposed rule before initially submitting the final proposed rule to this committee. And that amendment is reflected in the memo to this committee, the first memo to this committee dated December 23rd of 2024. And that specifically directs the Secure Residential Recovery Facility to submit to the licensing agency at Dale, which Pam is the director of, a monthly summary of emergency and voluntary procedures used at the facility. Dale consulted with the Department of Mental Health as to the contents of those summaries, the purpose of which is to enhance the licensing agency's oversight of the use of these emergency and voluntary procedures in this new setting. You will note the department also subsequently made some additional technical changes to the final proposed rule. Those are reflected in the memo to the committee dated January 13th. And those changes are not substantive, and many were made simply to improve the clarity of the rule at the suggestion of Legislative Counsel. So in conclusion, the department respectfully requests that the committee approve the final proposed rule, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Seeing any? Senator Bray.
Good morning.
And welcome.
Thank you. I don't know, technical difficulties, and my own IT staff had a problem figuring them out, but I made it. Mr. Shore, I think you mentioned a December 23rd memo.
Yes.
As well as the January 13 memo. So is the January 13 memo comprehensive? It includes all the edits of December 23rd, or are they both part of your submission?
They're both part of the submission. I don't think I reiterated the one addition that was made on the December 23rd memo in the January 13th memo. But taken together, those reflect all of the changes that have been made to the rule following its initial submission to the Secretary of State.
Thank you. And it's a little hard for me to read the room on this screen view, Mr. Chair, but without trying to preempt any further discussion, I would then move that we approve rule, is it P35, Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, licensing and operating regulations for therapeutic community residences with proposed modifications submitted by the department and a memoranda dated December 23rd, 2024 and January 13, 2025.
I think it just needs to be the memorandum dated January 13th because the December 23rd memorandum was the original filing. So to be consistent with how we typically do it, it would be just the January 13th, 2025 memorandum. Because the other one was incorporated into the initial filing that we received.
Okay, thanks. I misunderstood the, so thank you. So I would amend the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Bray. Any additional questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Next up, we have Rule 24P20, Agency of Human Services, Agency Designation. And Ashley Johns is reporting. Ashley?
I am, thank you. My name is Ashley Johns. I am the staff attorney for the Agency of Human Services. I have also brought with me today Eva Dayon from the Department of Mental Health and Jennifer Garabidian from the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living. This rule was a collaboration amongst departments. So in the event that the committee had any questions for specificity from those two departments, I wanted to have my experts here to provide that information. This rule is to, or the proposal is to amend the rule on the agency's designation. This rule is required to implement state and federal guidance and laws pertaining to mental health services and disability services that are provided throughout the state. The rule establishes the requirements for the designated agencies to provide mental health and intellectual and developmental disability services to a distinct geographic area within Vermont, and establish the obligations of the specialized service agencies to provide services within Vermont. The amendments to this rule update a rule that has not been modified since 2003. The updates focus on modernizing language, aligning with current policy, practice, and clarifying and modernizing the processes that are existing in the rule. For example, using technology and data as we currently do, as opposed to how we did in 2003. There are 5 new sections that were added to this rule. We've added a section regarding authority, general requirements, continuity of services plans, investigations and enforcement, and culturally and linguistically appropriate services. We've also made changes to the existing sections of the rules in alignment with modernizing and bringing this into alignment with the current practices. We found no economic or environmental impact from the rule amendments. And in drafting this rule, the department worked with the designated agencies, the specialized service agencies, standing committees, mental health and disability services, advocacy organizations, and the healthcare advocate. We also incorporated many of the language changes that were requested in public comment. We had more than a dozen meetings with these various entities prior to having our public meeting, where we did receive comments and have incorporated many of those into the rule. We did receive comments from Legislative Council on Friday, the 24th, and we are happy to adopt them. Many of them were clerical in nature, but did not have time to adopt them prior to this meeting to send a memo to the committee. And we're available for any questions the committee may have about the content.
Thank you. Committee?
Well, it would be nice to see the final language, that's all. So
Sweet.
any approval would have to be contingent on having
Yeah,
final
we
language
do
in
have-
response to.
We do have it. We did receive on the evening of January 28th,
Right.
Tuesday night, we got a memo that had the documented changes. Emery, did that make it out to the committee?
Oh, probably.
Okay, it looks like it didn't. I can walk the committee through the changes, or Ashley could. Just so you know, and we do have a copy of it that I'll circulate to the committee right now.
Okay. Maybe Ashley should do that.
I did not submit a memo with the changes
I'm sorry.
that Ledge Council
Nope.
proposed.
Never. That's recovery services. Never mind. I'm sorry. Wrong rule, Ashley. I apologize.
I wondered
So-
who might have done it in my stead. I was excited that someone had taken that away from my to-do
No,
list.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong rule. Do you mind walking the committee through the changes so that they are aware of what they're approving?
Absolutely. I can.
Thank you.
We
Sorry
had
about that.
received, it was almost all clerical in nature. There were a few typographical errors, but I can pull up the comment from Ledge Council that we received. Maybe. There we go. So Legislative Council submitted comments in section 2.1. The phrase establishes the obligation of specialized services agencies by AHS read as awkward, and considered rewording it to establishes the responsibilities of specialized services agencies as assigned by AHS. We're happy to accept that comment. There was a typographical error in section 3.10.1 that should read severe and read sever. Section 4.2.1.3, specialize should be specialized. Section 4.6.1.13, the word usher should be replaced with insure. Section 4.12.2.3, the word agency should be capitalized. Section 7.1.3, specialized service should be capitalized. Section 8.6, Dale and DMH should be changed for consistency to not using the acronyms. And section 9.1, adding the word relevant before the word department rules. There was also a question that was posed about whether or not specialized service agencies have catchment areas. And I can ask Jennifer if that is the case, and if it is, we can add that phrasing to section 3.4.
So I'm going to respond to that question.
Jennifer or Eva?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if you were looking for an answer to that now. Does specialized service agencies have the capability to be statewide organizations? They're not required to serve everyone statewide, but have the ability to perform statewide services.
Which means we would not add the phrase catchment areas to 3.4. Thanks, Jennifer.
That tracks with how DMH treats it as well.
Is the committee okay accepting this as?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, yeah. I think I would move that we approve Agency of Human Services rule on agency designation with the changes that were just presented to us. And it came from Katie McClynn's Ledge Council's memo as presented by Ashley. Without the catch, I can't.
John's.
Okay, thank you. Without the phrase catchment area. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Any additional discussion, comments? Okay. Senator Lyons has a motion to approve those changes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. And you'll submit that to the committee, please.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rule 24, P21, Department of Health Recovery Services Organizations Certification Rule.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said for this one, you do have the memo that
Okay.
was submitted on the 28th.
And we
I
have
apologize for the
Natalie
confusion.
Wheel. Is it Wheel?
I think that we do this once a month. It's wild.
Okay.
Once in a while, we get it right.
Once in a while, yes. I'll remember that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. Thank
Uh,
you.
Please proceed, yes.
Thank you, Chair Squirrel and committee members for having us today. I'm joined by my colleague, Nicole Rao-Minigai, who is the subject matter expert, and will be joining me in answering any specific technical questions that I don't have the answer to. So my name is Natalie Weil, and I'm the policy advisor for the Department of Health. And with this filing, we're proposing the Recovery Services Organization Certification Rule. The purpose of the rule is to provide certification requirements for recovery services organizations. Certification is required pursuant to this rule for any recovery services organizations that receive state or federal funding for the provision of recovery support services through the Vermont Department of Health. So this is a completely new rule that establishes this certification process and provides the certification requirements for recovery services organizations that are receiving funding for the from the Department of Health for the provision of recovery support services. So in drafting this rule, the department worked with an extensive list of stakeholders, including the 12 recovery centers that the department is currently funding. And I'll just name a few here: Kingdom Recovery Center, Journey to Recovery Community Center, the Turning Point Center of Bennington, Turning Point Center of Central Vermont, Upper Valley Turning Point, which is also known as Second Wind. And there are a bunch more, and I'm happy to go through them all. But I'm going to pause there because this extensive list of stakeholders have all reviewed and support the proposed changes. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And do you have a memo?
Yes, Natalie submitted a memo in the evening on January 28th that is in your materials for today. This was the memo that I mistakenly referenced with the last rule. And it outlines a few additional changes that the department made in response to Katie's review of the rule and suggestions that were made.
Sure, I saw that.
We did this.
Oh, here it is. Katie, is there anything you'd like to speak to here, or?
No, a lot of my comments had to do with the fact that some of the committees spent time working on a different type of recovery residence and defining it last year. And the definition that the department cross-referenced referenced just certified of those type of organizations. So they were carving out only certified recovery residences, and I questioned whether they intended to also carve out recovery residences that weren't certified, and that does seem to be their intent. So I think they cleaned that up.
Representative Bigley.
Mr. Chair, I guess the only thing I don't see, and maybe I just haven't seen it, but when was the last time this rule for certification requirements was updated? Has it been a while?
Thank you for your question. This is a completely new rule. There's never been certification requirements established for recovery services organizations through rulemaking. There has been grant agreements with these recovery support organizations that require these things for funding from the department. So this is the first time this will be in rulemaking.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, committee members? Senator Lyons?
So I'll move that we approve Vermont Department of Health Recovery Services Organization Rule, and as modified in the memo from Natalie Weil, January 28th, Department of Health.
Senator Lyons has motion to approve the rule as modified. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
did something last year.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Is there anything else on our agenda?
That is it.
Okay. Before we adjourn, this is the last committee meeting of the past biennium. And next Thursday will be first committee meeting of the new Lcar committee. I'd like to start by thanking both Senator Bray and Senator Lyons for their service on this committee. Both of you longstanding members of this committee. And I certainly appreciate Senator Bray taking the time to join us today. All dressed up, ready for committee?
Yeah, I wouldn't dream of missing it.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to both of you.
Thank you. It's been a real,
Thank you.
I really like serving on Lcars. I think probably Chris Bray has as well. It's really one of the most important committees that we have because it follows through with what we do in the State House to what happens out in the real world. So I wish you all well and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your good service.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't appreciate the administrative law side of things. In the holding back here.
It's not an easy place.
Not only do they not appreciate it, they don't even know it exists.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I would
Yes.
just like to say thanks, and it's been a pleasure to serve. And you know, the reminder for current when I was one as well, somehow it is a little tricky for committees to remember to express legislative intent in their bills. And as someone on the Lcar end of things, it's always great when a bill comes through that you can refer to and reconcile the two. The rule in front of you and the clear expression of legislative intent.
yeah, and I think that's something that I think when Anthea was here before, that we did spend some time working with committee chairs and Legis Council to help educate people how important it is to
Right.
put something
I
in the bills that helps
Right.
us,
You're right.
you know, with that. Because when we turn to Legis Council and say, what's legislative intent, not their job to do that necessarily.
Yeah, we're not elected,
Feels-
so.
So I will make one other comment. I think it's critically important for chairs of committees to be reminded
Yeah.
that they do have that responsibility when rules come through to read them and then to sign off on the form.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're left.
Yeah, I think it is important. It's even most important when there's controversy attached to it,
Yes,
to hear from
absolutely.
chairs, committee's jurisdiction. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Next week, I'll just announce with Seth, Representative Bongart's becoming Senator Bongart's. We had an opening on the representative side. That'll be Larry Sakowitz from House Environment. And on the Senate side, Senator Beck and Senator Plunkett, I believe,
Right.
is going to be joining us. So we'll have our first meeting next week and get organized and move forward. So thank you. This meeting's adjourned.
Terrific.
Thank you.
here.